Today's episode is sponsored by our friends at Ian's Display Accessories, the best figure stands for vintage and modern action figures, shipping nationwide. And our friends at Famous Faces and Funnies, located in Melbourne, Florida. Check out their live Facebook auctions for amazing deals on back issues, toys, and cards. Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Codename YouTube Hero 2. Hi, I'm your presenter, Shabu Are You. Today's an extra special episode, and yes, my finger is still broken, but we're going to endure. In the sense that today especially is International Women's Day. Now, despite having the small number of offerings as far as female characters goes from our iconic 80s and early 90s toy lines, the Gen Xer holds the highest regard for women. Unlike our baby boomer parents, the notion of barefoot and pregnant sounds absolutely silly and outdated, and rightfully so. Now, remember, we're the generation that saw Princess Leia grab the blaster and say, somebody got to save our skins. Now, think about that for a second. That one line absolutely changed everything. Dale Arden of Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon fame, would never utter those words. She'd be the damsel in distress. She would hurt her ankle and happily wait for the big strong guy to come and save her. Not Princess Leia, no. And the other thing is that as Gen Xers, we saw our mothers work 40 hours and put in an honest day's work and still put food on the table and clothes on our back. Now, there's one story in particular. Hold on. Now, Optimus Prime means so much to me, and my regulars know this. I've talked about this story. It was the Christmas of 1984. After a long day's work, my mother would take me after work and we'd hit every single store imaginable to look for this guy. And I can remember going to 5 stores: Sears, Toys R Us, Kmart, um, and then finally went to a store called Best. And she saw a guy, she had 2 Optimus Prime in his cart. And innocently, she thought, because he was wearing the same shirt color as the worker, she thought she was just a guy restocking the shelves. She picked one up out of the guy's cart and said, "Shabu, I found one," triumphantly, only to realize her mistake. The man had put 2 in his carts for his 2 children. Seeing this mother's reaction, and excuse me for getting emotional, but he happily gave that one of them to my mother and said, "Merry Christmas." To this day, when I hold Optimus Prime, that's what I think about. A woman's love for the child. And the fact that she would go through embarrassment, whatever, just to fulfill that little boy's wish. That is strength, ladies and gentlemen. To this day, Optimus Prime personifies everything that a mother does for her little boy's happiness. There's nothing stronger than that. And that's why Optimus Prime is so just endearing to me, is because not that that's the only thing that I think about my mom, but it's just that whole notion. That is strength. So today in this episode, we're going to look at some iconic women in these iconic franchises. I'm picking things out of my collection just to talk about them and share them. Maybe your list is different, but I think the first one we're going to share should be universal. She is the standard bearer. So without further ado, let's kick off International Women's Day right. Here we go. Of course, we begin with the as mentioned grandmother of it all, my 1977 Princess Leia. This was actually my uncle's figure that he handed down to me because he's 9 years my senior. And let's be honest, I didn't start remembering until Return of the Jedi. I remember my dad taking me to the movie theaters. I can remember bits and pieces of sitting there and watching it. I was still a little young, but to this day, my uncle reminds me that he handed me a little nest egg, and I thank him for it because these are the actual figures I've kept in my collection since that time. So they, again, a little sentimental value, meaning to me, but the figure is part of the infamous early bird special. And of course, historians look at it as a disaster, but I look at it as a stroke of genius. Now, my regulars know that, one of my degrees is in econometrics. And one of the simple laws of economics is, with um, in order, a decrease of supply would be an increase in demand. And what's interesting is people who didn't even have the notion of picking up this figure suddenly wanted this figure or the whole Star Wars line very badly, especially after that movie. So it wasn't a disaster. It was a stroke of genius, in my opinion. But that's not why we're here. This figure was actually the first time that little boys, let me straighten her out a little bit, was the first time little boys went up to mommy and daddy and say, I want this action figure. And it just so happened to be a girl. And never before that's happened. And so she is the trailblazer, standard bearer of all that is good. Now, the interesting is, even when she was depicted as being sexy in the slave Leia, and again, this one right here is this, all those original people, cover your ears, but this is the Stan Solo that would fit in the iconic Kenner line. This is a freaking amazing figure. Oh, there goes her staff. And of course, we go with the 25th anniversary. I'm not 25th anniversary. The Star Wars Black Series, which a lot of people say will never be made, never be updated again because of the fact that what it quote unquote depicts. And that's not why people gravitate. That even in that state, Princess Leia fought on the Jabba's sail barge, killing Jabba. And part of her own rescue, as a matter of fact. She wasn't a damsel in distress. She actively killed the monster that everybody in the Outer Rim feared by choking him to death. And the other one is the Power of the Force line, which I think is a great figure to pick up. They did make a quote-unquote vintage cardback style with this same exact mold that goes for 4 times the value. So this one, I think, is the more budget-friendly, and it's the same mold from that one. So you're essentially paying another $50 or shit, 100. I think it goes for 100 just for the card back, and that's no big deal. So I'm glad to have that. And of course, you have the Hoth Princess Leia. This was when the Black Series started to use those better face sculpts, and I remember I saw this and I went ape shit because finally, you went from this to that, and that's just striking right there. And of course, her Bespin Kenner line. There's actually a new release of the Endor Princess Leia that I'm going to pick up at my local Walmart. Boys actively going after female characters, and it was all because of Princess Leia. And I'm so glad I have her representing in my collection because she's just an iconic person. I try to make a Phison version of a evil Sith Princess Leia, but that went horribly wrong. And as a result of Princess Leia, this boom of powerful female characters emerged from the Star Wars to this very day. Now, the difference is, I'm going to say it, Unlike these figures, these characters, Princess Leia's ascension was so organic. It wasn't a movement, it wasn't a push. She just it was natural and effortlessly. That's what the fans responded to. Um, the thing is with Star Wars nowadays, it just seems like they're trying to push the strong female down our throats. You don't need to do that, you know. That's where modern Star Wars is failing immensely. I mean, no character personifies that than Rey. Um, and I picked up this figure because I think it was cool. We all have that inner light side, dark side. I mean, it's not clear cut in normal life. You know, we have a mixture of both, that duality that we're struggling with. That's what I liked about Rey, but they should have done it more naturally instead of forcing it like, oh, look at this, she's the hero. Like from the start, that movie was fucked. And that's what's so sad sitting there is you had this opportunity and they fumbled the ball. But, you know, we all know about Gina Carano, and I think this figure is going to become popular, 10, 15 years from now. But again, I may not agree with her position or what she says or what she thinks, but at the same time, to kind of just get her off and shuffle her character in like a couple lines that we saw in The Mandalorian. Oh, she went off world. She's a leader of something. I mean, it kind of leaves the door open in a little bit. So, hey, people say and atone for their mistakes all the time. So, there's a possibility that that character could be brought back. But one of my favorite Jedis is actually Aya Sakura. And, I got the Revenge of the Sith. This is my favorite figure in this whole line, is the Aya Sakura Jedi Knight figure. The fact that she was different, she dressed differently than the other Jedis. And even though I don't really like to buy modern Star Wars, I picked up her Clone Wars 50th anniversary recently, and I'm happy to do so because I like the character. Reva, on the other hand, it was forced. But again, I want them to do something with her than just leave her at the Obi-Wan series. The fact yes, she is African American, she is a tortured soul, but they have to kind of bring her out a little bit and make it be kind of natural. And this way, look at this. It was on clearance for $3, this figure. And to me, that was sad. I mean, they just fumbled the ball with this character. And of course, Ahsoka Tano. I mean, I cannot believe how this character has become, the face. And to these young girls, this is Star Wars to them. And 30 years from now, they're going to be going crazy about Ahsoka Tano. And that's awesome. I mean, Dave Filoni did a wonderful job with this character. Even to us hardcore Gen Xers, we are like, all right, Ahsoka Tano is pretty cool. I'm looking forward to her series on Disney Plus. That's going to be interesting. And on the flip side, Asajj Ventress is a character I absolutely love. I mean, now because she's not being used, like, they're not shoving her down our throats, and that old the first Clone Wars, the one that this is based on, those short little clips or little episodes that they had, and then they had the proper Dave Filoni Clone Wars. But that Clone Wars gave us a very tortured young girl. And the fact is, when you learn more about her lore, how she ended up, how she died, you just want to know more about this character. She is amazing. Asajj Ventress is probably one of my favorite modern Star Wars villains because they seldom use her now. And I think that makes it grow. And when they do, all eyeballs are going to be on her because such an awesome character. I mean, she still has the Boss relationship that could be explored. There's so many things that they could do with this character that's yet to be unearthed, and I just cannot wait. And we just saw recently in The Mandalorian season number 2, Bo-Katan Kryze. This is another female character that has an amazing arc. Kind of like I want to be the leader, but I don't want to be the leader. The responsibilities of selflessness, wanting to rule, bring her people together, and losing the Darksaber. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff going with this female character that I am interested in. So, from Princess Leia, you have this whole plethora of female characters. Just, hey, Disney, Lucasfilms, let it come naturally. Don't make it a political agenda and shove it down our throats. Take lessons from Princess Leia, and some of these characters will be just as endearing with even us old heads. I think there is a window of opportunity. I mean, we're, as much as we say we're checked out of Star Wars, it sucks, there's still that 8-year-old boy that wants to go back to the galaxy far, far away. Now, when you talk about strength, you can't get any stronger than She-Ra, Princess of Power. And it's amazing that such a, huge testosterone, machoism had place for wonderful female characters. I mean, She-Ra is awesome. Teela is awesome. The Sorceress is awesome. So, piggybacking off of Star Wars, they still made a little bit more female characters in the Masters of the Universe line. Now, this is a reproduction. This was the commemorative series. I think this came out in when did this come out? 2000. So, in 2000, they reissued the action figures, and I got Teela because I love Teela. I have a thing for Teela. I think she's awesome. So to get her and get this one and pair it from the retro line, I mean, these were one of the first, and Evil Lyn, who we'll get to in a second. But, She-Ra and herself, like, whatever, the complete equal to He-Man. What a statement that was, that yes, there is a male version to He-Man, and her name is She-Ra. It was able to tell girls that, they are on par with the guys, that they too can have this sort of, not omens, but the power sword. And that when it beckons, it will answer to her call. And she could use that power to do good. With, as Stan Lee says, with great strength comes great responsibility. And She-Ra personifies that. Again, selflessness. She's a leader of rebellion against tyranny. There's a lot of things that a young boy, would actively want to pick up these characters. I mean, Teela was basically He-Man's, right-hand gal. She did not back down from any challenge. And even though it was not done to our liking, the Kevin Smith Master of the Universe kind of took that to the 10th degree. But again, it was forced. It wasn't organic. And that's why that failed. And the Sorcerer's powers, as the almighty powerful, the wise, the intelligence, the fact that she controlled the keeper to the greatest power in the world. And that's an awesome responsibility to bestow onto somebody. Yet, what she sacrificed, we all saw our mothers do the same thing. Like, they had to make sacrifices, whether being there when we come back from school. No, they had to work. And I think that's where the Sorceress, us as kids, Gen Xers, saw that a little bit of these characters in our own mother, in our grandmother, in our sisters. I mean, the important women in our lives were reflected in these iconic toy lines. So right after Princess Leia, you have to go with Teela and the She-Ra and the rest of the Motu gals. I mean, They are just as vital to the storylines and to the whole mythos as any of the male characters. So we're going to put them at number 2. And as far as antagonist goes, Evelyn was a different monster all to herself. I have the hots for Evelyn. But the thing is, I think the one element that the Kevin Smith thing did was kind of flush her out and breaking away from Skeletor, where in the filmation we saw as subservient to Skeletor. I like that aspect to Evelyn. I think as bad as the Kevin Smith was, the whole Evelyn arc was actually well done. You have someone that believed in a cause, and we're going to see that with the Baroness, but that cause may have lost its gusto because there's internal demons that are going on with the character that, she's essentially good. She's not bad. But how she went about it and her things that happened to her altered her course of actions. But there is still that little bit of goodness in her that's redeemable quality. And that's what you look for, and that's what you gravitate for Evelyn. That and totally different from Teela and She-Ra. But liking Evelyn is, that you want her to break away from Skeletor, because she's an awesome woman and she doesn't need to be around Skeletor for her own worth. So you end up cheering for her when she has those brief uprisings and acts of defiance against Skeletor and her place in Motu. So, and just a quick note, I think the Super 7 version here, they did such a great job compared to, of course, they're trying to represent the original Evelyn, but these and this is kind of why, the reason why Masters of the Universe, or Mattel took back the license, because they originally leased it out to Super 7, who were killing it. And once they saw that dollars coming in, they're like, hey, we want a piece, we want more of that pie than the license share. So they kind of decide to release this. So this came out first, and you have that with the He-Man line too. I mean, He-Man's figure looks a lot better than the first Master Origins from Mattel. I mean, that is so much better than that. And the same thing you could say with Evelyn. It's a wonderful representation of the Filmation Evelyn that we saw, and this thing now has skyrocketed in value. So I'm glad I have it, and I like this version of Evelyn better than that one. And of course, the next line is Transformers, and you might be thinking, what? But yes, I think the female Autobots, people think that in Transformers the movie, RC was the first time a female Autobot was depicted. But no, you forgot about the Sunbow episode in Search for Alpha Trion, where they introduced to us female Transformers still holding up and leading the resistance in Autobots on Cybertron. And of course, Alita 1 was the person. And we also saw in War Dawn, when we saw the origin of Orion Pax, Optimus Prime, and his girlfriend, who, became Alita 1, and how, again, the whole notion that they kind of took the whole atom, from the rib bone, Eve was created, but how, only they could have this special connection and special power to save one another. And it's just a wonderful metaphor for the institution of love and marriage. Like, they're both, and Alita 1 that was the other thing is, I talked about the Kevin Smith and how they kind of like forced the whole female thing with Teela. But the one, even though there were some detractors from the War for Cybertron Netflix series, an excellent job they did is with with Alita 1, especially flushing her out and kind of making her being equal to Optimus Prime, and even more so in the fact that Optimus Prime always had doubt. And Alita 1 was the one, like every good spouse, like even my wife, is always there to reassure me that you could do this. I'm there for you in good times and bad times. So that's the sign of a good woman and, a good person. Someone who's going to be by your side in the happy times, but also the bad times. And I think that's where that War for Cybertron series was actually really good in showcasing that. And of course, RC, the first, woman in Transformers, who, if you look at her buns, that's funny. I just thought about that sentence. But again, this is an homage to Princess Leia. And we knew that, what's his name? Ron Friedman wanted to create a female Autobot from the get-go because his daughter was a big fan of the Transformers line. And he always got shot down. And, finally, for the movie, he got the green light. And of course, he drew on Princess Leia, some aspects of other heroic females. And the other thing also is Chromia. I did an episodes on each of these if you wanted to get more in-depth detail. But Chromia is awesome. And she is the soldier, the one that will carry out orders, will be there to support Alita 1 and all of activities. She is a soldier through and through, that women are capable. She even saves us few Autobots with her sharpshooting in the War for Cybertron. They did a good job, who we saw in that Search for Alphatron very briefly. And I think they fleshed her out a little bit more in that War for Cybertron. So you may not think it, but even though they were kind of late to the party, but the female Autobots are here and they're a vital part of the mythos now. And I know these kids today that like to modern Transformers, hold these characters in high esteem. So if you haven't, definitely pick up these figures. I mean, that's what I targeted when this whole modern Transformers came out, was, hey, I finally get to get female. I always wanted an RC figure. Never had that opportunity. Well, now you can make amends and pick up RC, and pink looks cool. Pink is awesome. So I'm so glad to add these figures in my collection. And of course, naturally, we end with G.I. Joe. And my regulars know that when I did my top 25 figures, I listed as Barbecue as being my first ever Joe. And because of that is my father was a Marine in Vietnam. So one of the rules we had when I was a little boy is no toys with weapons or guns. He hated guns. He did not, initially he was against any toys with guns because of all the stuff he saw overseas. He hated it. So the loophole was Barbecue. But my second figure and my first vehicle was none other than CoverGirl. And to this day, I love this figure. I mean, everything about CoverGirl, just the whole notion of she was a model and she threw it all away to be selfless and to fight. There's something that every boy could learn from that. And I remember, when you read the file card, of course, you picture like, someone like, well, who was at the time? Cheryl Tiegs. Like, because my uncle's obviously a Farrah Fawcett and stuff like that. How can anybody go from that to driving a tank? That was just mind-boggling. And it was just cool. It wasn't a big deal that she was a girl. She was a driver of this cool tank. That's all I saw. And of course, the Baroness is my favorite female character in G.I. Joe. I mean, look. I mean, and then when in the behind me, I'll show you in a little bit when I pull out all the Baroness figures, and many of my regulars have seen it, but there's something about that all black uniform and that red cobra on it That was badass. And this is the 1982 straight arm Scarlet. Of course, it has the broken thumb problem, but I don't care. I mean, I loved all of these figures. I didn't care that they were girls. I mean, because I was just so used to strong women. I mean, between mom, my nana, like, I saw them as warriors, they had to put up with me. But what an ensemble, a collection. And again, like the whole thing um, with these, Hasbro had trepidation about releasing these figures. It was kind of like, okay, maybe one. I mean, when you think about it, look at all these men just from one population sample. And that's a sausage party. And then you just got, this is the entire female lineup. That's it from the vintage era. Now, of course, one of the things I pride myself is having one of the biggest collection of modern female G.I. Joe figures. And I'll show you that in a second. But each one of these figures, I mean, they kind of like, they're kind of like stereotypes, in the sense that Scarlet was the all-American girl, and Lady J was the bookworm, and Jinx was the athletic, good in all sports type of girl. And then, of course, you have Zorana, who was the rebel. So it's just kind of interesting. Of course, the infamous version 2 of Scarlet, which is a pain in the ass to stand up, but the V crotch Scarlet, this is atrocious. And of course, Chung Li, they use the same mold for Chung Li, but I mean, this figure I hate with the passion. But it's a pain in the ass to stand up, but still, it's version 2 of Scarlet, so it has a high esteem. But again, GI Joe showed that not only anybody could be a hero. It doesn't matter your gender, your color, your background, your faith. It's just a group of people working together for a common goal. Isn't that something that we really need to be reminded of? And what's messed up is the same things like social injustices that, from Martin Luther King or all these women's suffrages, we're still fighting the same battle in 2023. To me, that's pathetic, And but still, these figures are a reminder that women are heroes. The everyday woman is more than capable of achieving greatness and contributing to greatness. You should not limit them. You should not, put restraints on them. I mean, of course, manners is something different than, you know, uh, holding the little woman's hand. You should always be a gentleman. You know, that's just the nature of being a man is, hold the door open, say please, thank you, always look a woman in the eye and stand up straight when, you present yourself and have some sense of honor. That's what women respect, you know, not flashy cars, not money, whatever, how you conduct themselves. But these figures are a reminder that every woman is capable of greatness. You don't need to have superpowers, you don't need to have anything. You just need to have the work ethic, drive, and desire. So recently, in the most recent live stream, they announced a 2-pack of the Cobra Valkyrie. And I've done several videos on the female Cobra troopers and the whole aspect of it, the Night Stalkers. So if you haven't watched those episodes in more detail, but that was one of the things that even though I'm a die-hard retro line, I took advantage of the modern line by focusing on female characters more so than any other thing. So my objective in modern collecting is picking up as many figures, female characters as possible, because obviously we saw from, this to, this is just the Cobra Troopers, and what an excellent job this is. We have the Cobra Officer, who was, I think that's her card up there. So part of the G.I. Joe Club. So that was an individual figure. And then they released the 3-pack, the Cobra Troopers. And what I love, and this is what I told, Emily, even though she's a evil, mean person, but one of the things I suggested is, hey, look what they did with the Cobra Trooper. You have red hair. You have African American. I think this one's Hispanic. A more accurate representation of what an army unit looks like. And it's a multitude of colors. That's what I love about it. This line is absolutely awesome. And I'm glad that I'm missing one Night Stalker. I wonder where she's at. But this was another 3-pack. The Night Stalkers was just a different color of the Cobra Trooper 3-pack. And this came out at the very end of the G.I. Joe Club, the Night Stalkers. And boy, I'm so glad I picked them up, because they weren't offered anywhere else except G.I. Joe Club. But again, phenomenal figures, and glad to have them. Okay, and then from that, again, via the G.I. Joe Club and the Transformers Club, we got offerings of characters we saw in the comics, like Dr. Biggles Jones. See those episodes that I did on the channel a couple years back. But Sidney Biggles Jones, what an important, especially during the whole Transformers G.I. Joe crossover, an integral character that didn't get a retro. Again, this figure was a pain in the ass to hunt down, and now it is through the roof in the aftermarket. And again, Agent Helix, we did the Silent Options story arc, the 4 issues where we get her backstory. The only G.I. Joe character that came out, her first appearance was in a video game. And I know our good friend Timmer recently did an episode, but we covered her several years back in that entire comic series, which was phenomenal. Our good friend Nito Diaz did the inks, and Larry Hama did a great story with that. And a more accurate, this was offered in the multi-pack with the DVD of, I think, what was it, the Weather Dominator storyline. So a more cartoon accurate version of Lady J, which in my opinion is still the best modern adaptation of Lady J. This is the best 4-inch scale figure of Lady J. Boy, her her buttons are kind of low there. Anyway, you gotta take that tongue in cheek. So humor me as I go up on the ladder to do this part. But again, we talked about the card back for the Night Stalkers, and we also got the offering of the first appearance of the Baroness in, G.I. Joe issue #1. So this 25th anniversary line is paying homage to the first G.I. Joe issue #1. And you know what? At first I was kind of bummed out about it, but as the years has gone by, I am so glad I have this version, besides the all black that we know and love so dearly. And again, going down the list, 25th anniversary line, Lady J, Scarlet, and then of course this is one of the Deke cells from the comic series that I was able to pick up. So this is what artists had to use to make sure that, this is the universal aesthetic that we're going for in all depictions of the Baroness. And again, I'm just glad I got that cell for that. One of the things that I'm so glad I picked up. And of course, the recently failed retro line, we have the Baroness, and we have Scarlet, and I think there's Lady J here somewhere. Oh, Lady J is over there. But we have her open down here. So we'll take a closer look at that figure. And of course, we did a video talking about the Baroness with this, this recent retro line, and compared it to the 2-pack social class, which is the best Baroness, in my opinion, in this 4-inch scale. This is basically a rip off of that, with minus those silver accents. And I did an episode talking about that, as well as her Untold Tales, which is a phenomenal issue in G.I. Joe. So we kind of did a 2-in-1. So if you haven't, check out that episode. But again, it's just, I mean, this is a beautiful figure. And of course, we looked at the Scarlet. This is the 25th anniversary line. We showed that was up on the wall. And how, in the rare case, this retro line that failed actually made a better version of Scarlet. I think that this retro line Scarlet is one of the best figures that came out in that failed line. That, what was that, 2019? So they did a great job with the face sculpt. Finally, they got Scarlet right. Even with these classified figures, this is still the best Scarlet in the last 10 years. I mean, wow, what a progress. And then, of course, the recent failed retro line, Lady J. And you could see why I think that this DVD multi-pack issue is the best version of Lady J. So that does it for all of the. I'm not going to do the classifieds because we hit them to death, but still, they're well represented. We saw there's been more female characters that's coming out in the classified line. And just real quick, this is like my Baroness section. So we have the statue that we did an episode with, and also the 2 classified versions, the retro and the Cobra Island one, and the Snake Eyes movie one. And what is it? Is it 5-inch or 4-inch? Which is a pretty good figure, the low budget Snake Eye origin figures. I mean, people, they didn't pick this up. They missed out on this one. This is a pretty good figure for that line. I know they have the Night Creepers. That was another one that was pretty cool. And then, of course, I know it's a mess, so sorry about that. But the classified line, well represented with all the female characters. And crap, the 2-pack they had, that was pretty good. Of the Blue Ninjas, they had a female ninja in that. That was pretty good. That was another great offering. So the point in this episode is that, while we celebrate International Women's Day, or, acknowledge it, the fact is women have always had a prominent role in the mind of the Gen Xer. You just have to open your eyes and see that everything that, I guess, women hope to get across to us men, as far as their abilities, their contributions, their respect, everything has, it was all there in front of us the entire time, more so than any other line. It wasn't forced. That was another thing that I think that this whole modern woke, or whatever the heck you want to call it, is not forcing it down your throats. And again, I go back to the example of Princess Leia. It was a naturally occurring thing. It didn't have to go out of its way to, again, like this Kevin Smith adaptation of Tila. I mean, it was like forced. It was taking this, and it's weird that of all people, Kevin Smith, when he's stoned and he's writing his comics, they're the worst comics in the world. I mean, Him and Walt, his buddy Walt from Comic Book Men, should not be allowed anywhere near a comic book. Sorry, Kevin Smith, but you suck at writing comics. But the way he depicts women in his comic books is just a stark contrast from what he's trying to depict in that whole Masters of the Universe. But these characters and the whole perception of women is just very interesting in the sense that, they are equal, they are important, and we should not overlook that. Even today, we're still fighting the same crap. I'm fighting the same crap, that my ancestors fought. And, I'm American, my father paid his dues. I paid my dues. We still get treated a certain way in certain circles. So there's a long way to go. Anyway, thank you for watching this amazing episode, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Codename New 2 Viewer 2. This is Shabu Are You, signing off.